Hello everyone, it's Elaine. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm going to be starting on some more winter and holiday themed projects, so let's jump right in. I've got a piece of white heavyweight cardstock here which I am blending on some Spun Sugar in Distress Oxide, focusing mainly at the top. I've sped this up. My hands do not move this fast, but you'll get the general idea. So once I've got a nice base colour of Spun Sugar, I'm coming in with Victorian Velvet in Distress Oxide ink and then darkening up a little more along the top edge with some Seedless Preserves. And finally, Distress ink in Black Soot right along that top edge. Nothing too dark, but just intensifying that colour just a little bit more. I've got the Woodland Slimline die by Mama Elephant. I've cut this out a couple of times. For this first panel, I have got a piece of thin paper from my notebook, and I am now ink blending on some colour along this bottom edge here. This is Distress Oxide in Seedless Preserves, and I'm blending on some colour on that middle edge, that second bank, but I couldn't seem to get any colour on the edges, so I took another of those die cuts and I snipped along that edge. I can save this piece for another project. And that top piece with the little trees, I'm lining it up on my original panel, securing things together with a post-it tape, and that will help me get a bit of colour along those outer edges, which also follows along the line of the stitching. Trying to use a fairly light hand. I don't want anything to stand out too much. I want everything to blend together. And once I'm happy with that, I just come in with a bit of Black Soot Distress ink. It's mainly what was left over on that brush already, just to darken that front edge. And now I've got my watercolour paints here, these metallic paints. I'm using sort of really nice rich gold colour. I've loosened that with some water, coming in with a really tiny paintbrush and splattering both panels with some of that nice gold paint. Leave that to dry for about 5 minutes, and then I can come in with some white gouache to give the illusion of some snow. Again, loosening that with some water and the same paintbrush, which has been cleaned, and then splattering that again over both panels. So while I set that aside to dry, I can start on my colouring of my foxes. I have cut these foxes out with my silhouette machine, and they have been stamped onto Copic friendly cardstock with my Memento Tuxedo black ink. These little foxes were part of the Mama Elephant and Simon Says Stamp collaboration in Stamptember. So if you have them, feel free to copy these Copic colours. I got this Copic marker combination off of Pinterest. If I can find the original post where I've found this combination, I will link that down below. But I'm really enjoying this combination for foxes. It's not too orange. And also I really like that E18 for some depth of colour in the shaded areas. I've also been using E19 instead of E18 on some of my foxes. That gives a slightly more orangey tone, but I think this E18 is really nice because it's more brown. So have a play around. If you haven't got this stamp set, if you've got any other fox stamps in your stash, then you could perhaps use those. But the woodland background could be used for any kind of winter scene. So don't feel like you have to have this stamp set. Feel free to mix things up. I have sped up my colouring here. I'm colouring one of the fox's body. And now I'm coming into colour in the other areas like the face, the tips of the tail and the feet. So some E40 markers for the face and the tail, which I do come back and colour in a minute. I realised that I haven't coloured that part in. And then I come in with some E70 markers for their feet. I wasn't sure whether to leave their feet white or brown, but we went with brown for today. I'm coming back in here to colour the tail. And now I'm going to colour in the snowmen. So I've got some C markers for the hat, some BG markers for their scarves. And then I just put a touch of lighter BG markers on the snowmen and the snowballs. Didn't want to leave those out without any colour, and a tiny little bit of YR marker for the snowmen's noses. Now coming in with some brown markers for the wood around the fire, and then colouring in the fire. This is the fire where our little fox is toasting his marshmallows. This is the little log that our little bird is sitting on, so some E markers for the log, and again coming in with the same BG markers for this tiny little bird. Super adorable. So now I want to add some glitter to these tree branches on the die cut. So I just squeezed some liquid adhesive onto that scrap piece of paper there. I came in with a makeup sponge and dabbed it all over the top part of that panel. And now I'm sprinkling on some iridescent glitter over a coffee filter. And this is going to make my tree branches all lovely and sparkly, as if they are covered in snow. So you can kind of see it there. It's hard for my camera to pick up. Just wipe along the edges to take off any excess. And you can probably see the sparkle a little bit better there. So now I'm lining my top panel over the bottom panel, and now I can just trim off probably about 1/8 of an inch either side. And this is going to fit nicely behind my Woodland panel. I will leave the exact measurements on the screen and down in the description box. And I've got a card base here, which is going to have a card front measuring exactly the same as my panel, so there will be no border around the edge. Pop some liquid adhesive on there, and to stop me rubbing off that glitter as I'm pressing down, I just grabbed a spare bit of paper to help me press everything down. And now we can start assembling the card and adding final embellishments. So I've just popping some bits of cardstock on the back of my foxes. That will help everything sit flush and even on the card. Adding my little bird onto the log. And now to move on to the sentiment, I am using that tiny little heart from Sunday sentiment stamp set. And I'm taking a sentiment from the Winter Fox stamp set. I've got some black cardstock in my Mini Misty, treated that cardstock with my anti-static powder tool. And I've already stamped out that tiny little heart with my Versamark ink. So I stamped that once, and then I'm moving my cardstock over to the left, and I'm going to stamp it again, leaving enough room in the middle to stamp my worded sentiment. So once I'm happy with that placement, I'm going to stamp that again with Versamark ink, and then I can pop the worded sentiment in the middle and then ink that up as well, press down firmly. And then I can heat emboss everything in one go. So this is Ranger's super fine white embossing powder. Tap off the excess and heat set that with my heat tool until it's nice and glossy. And then trim that down with my little guillotine, leaving quite a thin border around the edge. I didn't want it to take up too much space on my card. And to give that a little bit more dimension, just popping a little bit of foam tape on the back and securing that to the centre of the card above that fox. I just really like that little extra detail of the hearts either side of the sentiment. Added some liquid adhesive all around and popped on these little clay snowflakes from Lucy's Cards. They add some more really nice dimension and fill in some of those gaps as well. So I'm adding some black Jelly Roll Glaze pen to the fox's eyes, or the ones that are open, and also adding some clear glaze pen on the feet and the noses. Popped a little bit of my Nuvo Aqua Shimmer pen on the snowmen. And then to fill in some more of those gaps around the foxes, I'm using this Kuretake two-way glue pen. It's like a ballpoint pen, and just dabbing and squeezing and dragging that glue here and there. And I'm going to use my glitter duster. It's got the same glitter as we put on the trees, but it gives a really nice fine mist of glitter. I'm going to focus that where I pop that glue, and that will just help to give that snowbank area a little bit more interest and catches the light as it moves, and is super pretty. And you can get a better look here as I move the card. And that is the card complete for today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, comment below, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Check out the description box for all the supplies, and I will see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.